Hi everyone, it's Chris speaking. Welcome back. Today we're going to have a talk about something I was not prepared for in transition. So, for me, by the time that I was signed off on hormones, I thought that I had watched every YouTube video, I thought I had read every Reddit article, I'd spoken to 3 or 4 different doctors about what to expect from transition, and I thought I was pretty well versed in what was going to happen to me. I had everything about dysphoria down pat. I had everything about the surgeries that I wanted to go for in my head. I basically was prepared for all the physical changes that I was going to get over the coming months, good or bad. But what I wasn't prepared for was some of the social changes that would happen on testosterone. And I think that's an important thing to realize and to speak about. So I got signed off on hormones, all good, and now I'm 7 months on. I, most of the time, pass as a straight, white male in society, which commands a certain respect, much to the detriment of other members of our society. So, all of a sudden, I find myself from being quite low on the food chain, identifying as a woman, to now being quite high in this sociological food chain that society has created for us, and it's to the detriment of women, and it's not overly fair, and I say not overly fair, it's not fair for women, and it's something that I was not prepared for at all, was the difference in how I'm being treated now as opposed to how I was being treated 6 months ago. It's quite alarming just how much that has changed, and for me, I wasn't prepared for it. So, some changes are people now get out of my way. They will stop speaking and listen to things that I have to say. They will apologize if they've wronged me in some way. Suddenly I'm asked my opinion, or I'm asked to help in a physical task. I'm on the other side of the coin than where I was, not that long ago. And 7 months ago or 6 months ago, I was pretty much ignored. It was safer for me to be small and quiet and just go about my day. I wasn't spoken to. When I say I wasn't spoken to, I wasn't spoken to like I knew what I was doing. And I wasn't the go-to when I was out in public. So, that in itself is male privilege. I was not ready to have male privilege, and then I wasn't ready to know what to do with that. I read an article the other day by a person named Charlotte Alter, and within that article they talk about how the experiences of trans men can provide a unique window into the differences between genders and how they are perceived. She basically explains that men who are raised and socialized as female can describe ways that they're treated differently as soon as they were perceived as male in the outside world. And I felt that quite a bit since, coming out and now passing as a male most of the time. So there are basically 4 aspects of that article which I want to sort of break down. So they gained professional respect, but they lost intimacy. They exuded authority, but they then caused fear. So breaking those down into those 4 separate parts, I think all of them have an element of truth to it. So in terms of professionalism, and I work in quite an open and diverse business, it doesn't mean that the people in that business aren't susceptible to prior societal learnings, I guess you would say. So in meetings, for me now, I find that people tend to take me at my word easier than before. I don't have to provide as much justification. So if I come to the table with something and I have conviction when I'm talking about that, people will generally, or I've found that lately, people are more inclined to just agree without that justification. Because I am who I am as a person, I will still have that justification there and I will present it. But now I find there is a nodding of heads or a yes before the why, and that is something that we're taught from a young age, and it's taught from our parents, and it's just to say yes to men because it's easier, or they are assumed to know things. We don't know things. Ask us to justify our actions. The second part of that article was a loss of intimacy. And this is something that I found or felt really early on, even before I was sort of passing in public. And it came in the form of more of a, I guess, personal experience. So my partner and my very good friend all of a sudden stopped talking to me about things I didn't think I wanted to know about. I wasn't in on the gossip anymore. I wasn't in on the girl chat anymore, because they thought that I just didn't care, because boys don't care about that sort of thing. And that's something that's come from their upbringing and their, I guess, internalization and perceptions on gender. So I had to explain to them that it made me feel left out, and of course I still wanted to know that I wasn't changing as a person just because I have asked them to use the correct pronouns and names. I definitely also felt a lack of trust from not just these women, but women in general. So stereotypically, I guess men are perceived to not care or not want to get involved in emotional conversations, or they find emotional life trivial and just sort of want to be the ones who are going out and doing stuff. And for me, and I don't know, maybe some other trans guys, that's not the case. We want to know about you, and that's not to say that cisgendered men can't also want to know about you and be involved in emotional conversations and gossip. It doesn't work that way. Everyone is completely different. But it was a conversation that I had to have with these people to say that I still want to be involved. So the next thing on that list was exuding authority. I don't think I necessarily exude authority myself, but when I am out with only females, I tend to be spoken to first in public, or women will let me speak and hide behind me. My partner has done it without realizing that she's doing it. I have also, on the other side of that, spoken over her to get to a point because I felt like they weren't listening to her, but they would to me. And that's on my bad, and I apologize to her for doing that, and I'm not sure where it comes from, but this internalized, I guess, gender stereotypes have come out. So the example that I want to share with that is her car got serviced the other day, and it was the second time that we'd taken this car to get serviced, and she was talking to the lady about what needed to be done, and I interjected because she wasn't giving Rachel or my partner the time of day, and all of a sudden I was being listened to. And it's not fair for women to have to do that, nor is it fair for them to have to fight to be heard, but it is something that I've now noticed in society. And that brings me to point number 4, which is exuding fear. For me personally, this is quite upsetting from both a male and a female perspective. A majority of the time, if I'm making a point or I'm explaining something in a frustrated manner, I'm more likely to be listened to without rebuttal if I'm talking to a woman. Women don't speak up against men. They don't think it's safe, and that's not fair. I did this in reverse in my past life, so I've seen it happen. The way that men were speaking to me was sometimes condescending, and it was almost like my brain couldn't possibly keep up with what they wanted to explain to me, so they had to dumb it down. So I shut up. In short, I shut up, and I took what they had to say, and now I find that people will do that to me. If I am talking about something and I'm frustrated, people will shut up and just become small. There are times when I've been frustrated and I've been speaking to my partner in a frustrated tone, and I've seen her back down, shrink into herself and go elsewhere. And I've come to her later and be like, I'm really sorry, that was shitty behaviour and it was not acceptable, and I've had to acknowledge that was me exuding exuding an authority and also causing fear at the same time. And she just said that she feels safer in those moments to become small and not deal with it. And I've seen that behaviour in other members of my family. I've seen that behaviour in my friend groups where a man will exude his authority and a woman will back down. And it's not the way, personally, that I want to go about my life, and it's not what I want for my partner, and if I'm honest, it's not what I want for women anywhere to have to do. I don't think it's fair. But that's, I have to thank my partner for being an honest individual, and even though she might hide on instinct, will come to me and explain how I can be better for her. And I think that conversation really does start with, honesty. If you're a dude who is exerting shitty behaviour, don't make your partner come to you, or don't make a woman come to you. Acknowledge that it's shitty behaviour and start that conversation. I am really thankful for Rachel for telling me how I can be better for her. In short, men, it is our job. It is our job to be better for women and to not to accept our shitty behaviour as correct. I think that trans men have this really unique viewpoint on this. It's why we can't afford to turn into stereotypical male. Personally, for me, it is why for me, going stealth isn't an option. We could potentially lead the way into women's rights, because we've been there. I saw a list on Reddit of things that can pinpoint a female-to-male transgender person a couple of weeks ago, and one of them was, you can tell if they're polite to women. A couple of things. One, not all men are assholes. Cis men can be just as polite and respectful of women. And two, having been on that side of the fence, we know what it's like to deal with macho masculine bullshit. So it makes sense that we would be polite and respectful to women. 3, if you think that only female to male transitioning men are polite to women, then you're part of the problem. So a quick word to the women watching this: you are valid and you deserve not only to have a voice, but to also be heard by people in your life. To the men, it's up to us to create a safe space and encourage that dialogue for our women. Just because you exude authority or just because you have privilege doesn't mean that we get to use it for evil. Let's use that bravado and that privilege that we have for good. If you made it until the end, thank you so much for watching. I know we've had a couple of long videos the last few weeks. I will go back to some shorter content. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to subscribe, my face will be somewhere on the screen, normally down here. And I'll catch you next time. Okay, bye. Yay, we're done.